Thank you for joining today's webinar on project billing and revenue, importance to the project manager. Designed specifically for the PSA Project Management Appreciation Month, this webinar will cover the key financial metrics that every PM should fully comprehend, including difference between revenue and billing, impact on the P&L and cash flow, how to accurately forecast revenue or earn value. If you have any technical difficulties, please type your concerns into the chat box and we will provide you with assistance. And here to introduce our presenter is Bill Bozeman.
Hey, good morning, ladies, gentlemen. Glad you joined us. Before we start and before I introduce my old friend Nadim Sawaya, I'll give you a quick story. Stories are always good, especially if they're true, and this is a true story. A number of years ago, I owned a systems integration company that operated on the Gulf Coast, specialized in heavy commercial and industrial type projects. So we're a small company. I decided to seek financing, which I was able to receive. And when I did, I hired an electrical engineer who was extremely good on the technical side of the business. And I also hired 2 sales A players. This doubled the size of my company in about 18 to 20 months, which was really great. Now I was handling the financial and business part. I had an electrical engineer handling the technical part, doing all the drawings. He was certified in all the products. We're a big software house dealer at the time. He had every certification you could have. And I also had 2 outstanding A players who were selling like crazy to the oil and gas refineries up and down the Gulf Coast. And I was losing money. Actually, I was making more money when I didn't have those people and was doing half the volume. And so I sat down one afternoon and I said, this is crazy. Everything is going great. We're getting all these big jobs, and I'm losing money. And it finally dawned on me that the reason I was losing money and I was having problems, my salespeople were angry with the engineers and the jobs weren't going well, is because I really wasn't managing the jobs in the field professionally. So I neglected what I'd later learned may be the most important part of running a successful security integration business, or for that matter, a contracting company in general. So I learned the hard way how important project management was. By the way, I hired someone that I stole away from Siemens, and this gentleman is still in the business 34 years later, still doing a great job. He turned my company around in a matter of about 6 months. The jobs that we were losing money on, we began making money on. He hired an assistant who ended up being almost as good as him, was a lady, by the way, and we lived happily ever after until I sold the company. So it's a true story, and I still believe today, unfortunately, many owners of systems integration companies don't give you guys nearly enough credit for the profitability and success of your company. So let me introduce Nadim Sawaya. Delighted to have Nadim. I've known Nadim for decades now, and I'm not just blowing smoke. I truly believe that he is probably the best at what he does, at least in the United States, as far as teaching project management, understanding project management, etc. By the way, he is not a consultant who has never done this. He has done it. And actually, I worked with Nadim when I sold my company to Pinkerton. And a little bit of history. Nadim is a CPP. This is a good thing to be. I encourage all of you to get your ASIS certification. Nadim is also a graduate engineer. Started his career in Abu Dhabi. He's a graduate civil engineer. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Nadim, originally you were building, were you building highway infrastructure in Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, that's what I did.
That's what I thought. So he's been in our business since 1987. I have seen Nadim literally in hundreds of meetings on all different kinds of projects, just really understanding budgeting, understanding negotiation, understanding sales, due diligence, strategic planning, etc. He's the best of the breed. And Nadim's now at a stage in his career where he's teaching guys like me and like you how to better run their company. So thank you, Nadim. Appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us.
Thanks, man. All right. Before I start, we have 1 hour, but I'm trying to. I will finish my presentation maybe in half an hour, and open it up for Q&A. Before I start, like I usually do on these, any kind of training, you guys on the phone now for 1 hour, you're investing around $1,000 investment. I know it's this is what's your value, your time value as a project manager, $1,000 an hour. So I want to make sure, when we leave, I leave you with something you can use right away. I'm going to open up this presentation for Q&A, and I did get some which Jamie shared with me, so I want to at least tell you what the agenda, what I want to cover. Bill hit it right. I feel a lot of project managers, a lot of owners, they feel like they can't or they don't want to share all the financials with the PM for different reasons. One of them, well, they know how much I'm making money, how much, and this is for me absurd. I feel part of your role as a PM, as you well know, especially nowadays, you are really the base for your company's success. You need to understand the financials. And when we talk about financial, this is dealing with this for a long time, I feel the big misconception or misunderstanding is the difference between billing and revenue. And as I want to present in a few minutes now, they are not the same. They're not the same. And you as a PM, definitely the pressure on you to bring the job within budget, try to make money, hopefully with change orders, but also cash flow, which is really nothing to do with revenue per se. It's separate. You need to make sure at least you have a positive cash flow. And I will go over all different variation of how we look at billing and revenue, but this is a big misconception. And as a project manager, or if you're an owner sitting in, this is a key driver in your success as a company or on a project basis. So to jump in, because I know we have a short time, I need to cover quite a bit of information. Let me dive into the agenda quick. So what we have, we're going to talk about P&L and balance sheet. This is the starting point. They're not the same. And each one has a different role in looking at companies, looking at making money, and also how you as a PM, you affect the P&L and balance sheet. Well, this will bring us to the difference. What's the difference between revenue and billing? And we want to talk a little bit about a term which you hear a lot. It's called earned revenue. And what's the difference between earned revenue and basically accounting revenue, I call it. Because earned is different. And we're going to talk about work in progress, forecasting, and finally we're going to talk about some performance metrics. Before I go into this, I just added this morning. This is some of the questions you guys sent in to Jamie. And quickly, I'm looking at, definitely we'll talk about retainage. If you don't know what retainage is, it's the holdback they keep on projects. We talk about change order revenue, deductive changes, earned, actual, and metrics. What kind of metrics? And also, I have a couple of questions on what happens if the job is losing. How do you crash land this thing, right? And also, the last one is how many billable hours do you expect to get per day per installation technician? So I want to visit all of this, the last one, at the end of my presentation when we talk about metrics. So let me dive into this. So when we talk about project finance, or any company's finance, you have what I call basic financial statements. I don't care if your company is one-man person or you're General Electric. Every company, they have something called balance sheet, and you have something called income statement. On a balance sheet, and I'll show you a sample, basic sample next, you look asset, you're dealing with cash. Income statement is revenue, profit. And the big driver, especially for most companies, is cash flow. 99% of companies will go bankrupt, not because they're not making money. They go bankrupt because they don't have enough cash to pay their bills. So what's your role as a PM? The key. You have to keep this in mind. if you sat in my or any kind of project management training, from the CSPM session to the PM, whatever, we always talk about a project consists of cost, budget, timeline, which is the time, and scope. What you have to add, as you're taking notes now, you have to add cash flow, because cash flow really is separate from budget and cost. This is a basic balance sheet. So what you see on this, you have assets, right? And we can have each one of us on the call have their own personal balance sheet. You look at your assets at home, cash, etc. The one thing I want to really focus on, these two, cash and account receivables. So what's an account receivable? As you know, account receivable is, so this is the billing portion of the project. The next one is going to be revenue. But I want to spend a couple of seconds talking about these two. Account receivables, anytime you send an invoice out to a customer and does not get paid, sits in account receivables. What happens if you get paid, hopefully within 30 days? It moves from account receivable to cash, right? That's the transaction you have. So if you look at the balance sheet right now, you don't talk about revenue, you don't talk about profit, you don't talk about COGS. You're only talking about cash, billing, part of your job as a PM. This is what you do in the balance sheet. Now the next one called income statement, and this is the basic one. Definitely you have revenue on the top, which is basically, like installation, could be service. We have call center, could be RMR, which the term you hear a lot about and you're hearing more and more moving forward. And this is basically the revenue you get in. We call top line. In COGS, this is where you have your material costs on the project, which we'll be talking about later about percentages. You're talking about installation or operation department labor. The big one is installation. You could have project management, engineering, sub. So you as a PM, and we'll reinforce this, you really have only control over this portion of the project, right? The margin, and I would say in a second why do you need margin, the margin is really, you have to build it into your cost to recover your overhead and make some money. Okay, so this is the basic formula of income statement. So anytime we talk about slip on a job or making money on a job, we're going to really look at the income statement, not the balance sheet. So this is a big first differentiation between the two. On a cash flow, this is another statement. You watch your cash in, you bill. The problem you have in our business that our cash, you're always behind the curve. You finish a job, if you have progress billing, you'll invoice it. If you're lucky and everything is fine, you get paid in 30 days. So if you do a best job without having deposits or pre-billing, you're always 60 days out. And as a company, you have to pay your employees 2 weeks, 1 month, a lot of your vendors 30 days. So you have really to do a lot of catch-up to stay afloat on the cash flow side. So this is more of a snapshot of what's your role as a PM in success of every company. There's a term called enterprise project management. Basically said every company, your company is based on portfolio of projects. If you look at any initiative you take, it's a project, including marketing, whatever you do. And going back to what you control on the project side, if you start making money on every project you have, what's going to happen at the end? Your company is going to make money, is going to invest in training, you're going to survive. So you are a driving force in success of every organization you have. Moving on, sell price. So these are formulas you need to know. Sell price is cost plus gross margin gross margin is sales expense, G&A, and profit. And I will reinforce this. You as a PM, the only thing you have control over is what? Cost. Margin is decided. You might show up to a job and management said, look, we need the backlog. We don't have enough work in the pipeline. We need to buy it at 10-15% margin. Your role as a PM does not change. And now if you look at the variance in how the margin play into this, a lot of factors. If you look at your business, we go up, your company goes bankrupt every 90 days. You're lucky if you have enough backlog for 12 weeks. So what happens if your backlog down to 6 or 4? You have all kind of issues, and your company might decide, say, you know what, we need to be more aggressive on the margin side. But whatever you do, you have to protect your cost. You cannot negotiate on the cost. And I see this happening all the time. We want to win a project, we go and take installation hours out or project management hours out. It shouldn't be this way. The only variable is your gross margin. Okay. The next one, I need to bring it up because this is a big misconception about margin and markup. Margin and markup are, most customers don't understand what a margin is. They understand a markup. I don't have time to tell you stories about this now, but you need to really understand the difference. Markup is percent of your cost, that's profit. And margin is percent of your sell price, that's profit. And I want to show you a sample in a second. So you look at your two formulas you have, sell price equal cost divided by 1 minus gross margin, and the sell price equal cost times 1 plus the markup. This kind of highlights the difference. If your cost on a job is 10,000 and I ask you to sell it at a 50% margin, if you plug in the formula, right, 1 minus 0.5 is 20,000. 50% markup, it's 15,000. So you see the difference between margin and markup. Margin is always higher. So why you want to confuse everybody with this? Markup is a straightforward term. You buy a shirt for 10, you sell it at a 50% markup, you sell price 15. Why most companies, and including myself or managers, I don't like the markup, because the markup, if you use a follow markup, it does not align with your income statement. Markup does not have enough, it's a metric, it's like looking at a gauge. It does not cover your overhead and profit. So many companies, and I see including the one I work for right now, markup is for sales, customers, but when we run the financials, when you look at how you're running the business, you need to go back to your margin. Okay, so let me break it down further. This is a job, $100,000 project, your cost is $70,000, and your gross margin is $30,000. And breaking it further down, so when you look at the gross margin, which really recovering your overhead, so SG&A is your overhead and profit. And this is how it breaks down. On average, and now I see a change on this, if you are in system integration, you don't have a lot of alarm, not of RMR, and you're making 5% net profit, this is pretty good. The average is around 2.5. So any variation, and I say this in my training, if your company making 5% profit, net profit, and you lose $1,000 on a project, you go over your budget, you need at least $20,000 job to make this up. This is the impact of losing $1,000 on one project. And many times, many of you guys on the call, you get, when management sit down and say, what happened on this job? What's the big deal? This is a $100,000 job. I lost $2,000. It doesn't seem too big of a number of looking at the size of the project. But keep in mind, 2,000, if you're making 5% profit, it's like you have to go in, sell, install, perform a $40,000 job to make it up. So I can't stress this enough. You are the driving force as a PM, the success of your company. No question about it. When we talk about revenue, we have different formulas. This is the one we're going to revisit. This is called percent completion. Percent completion is job to date cost divided by overall estimated cost. And the key is when you look at revenue following the percent complete, you're looking at cost over cost. And I will show you a sample in a second. And then you come up with a job to date revenue. The other two we kind of talked about, these two formulas, margin to go from margin percentage to margin sale. And I don't want to spend much time on these two items, the margin side. Let us dive into revenue recognition and we'll talk about billing. Before I get deep into this, why you need to, so there is a different variation of looking at revenue. One, which is really the construction way, like all the GCs, most of everyone use this formula called percent completion. And basically when you go back to your, to this formula back here, sorry, where is it? The formula back here, we look at this cost, because this drives percent completion. So if I move over, in this way, you have to add, so there's variation, one called percent complete and one's called job to date revenue. And there is a difference between the two. Percent completion is you look at your overall cost divided by estimated cost. Job to date revenue, and some companies, they don't look at your they don't look at your overall cost. I'll show it to you in a second. All right, let me go back here. I don't want to confuse you more than I have to. Sorry, here. So you have. So let's see with the first one, percent completion method. The first one, you look at your labor, your material, and sub. So to make money on a job, you need to spend money on a project. This is what I call earned revenue. How do you spend money? One is labor. Labor translate to timesheet. So if your technicians are not charging time to your specific project, you are not generating revenue. And I want to answer one of the questions which you sent in. At least 85% of your installation labor should be charged to jobs. So take the formula over 40. This is one way of really managing efficiencies. And you put all this material and sub, you come up with a percent completion. Some companies, and Bill and I worked for this before at Pinkerton way back, they don't look at material as included in your cost. They look at only labor and subcontractor. This is a conservative way of looking at revenue. The argument with this, I don't care if you order all kind of equipment on a job, unless you're spending labor and sub, which is part of the labor, you're not earning any revenue on it. So this is a more of a conservative way of looking at this. To take it the next step up, you can go in, and some companies, they don't, like I work for a company right now, any job of a certain size, 25, 70K, unless you get a customer to sign it off, approve it, there is no revenue. So this is another way I would call go into a more conservative way of dealing with revenue. But for now, as to cover all bases, this is the way you look at revenue, percent completion. Okay? Going back to the formulas we have, so we're going to be talking a lot, not a lot, focusing on this. So one more time, revenue is how much you spend on a project. The way you spend it is timesheet, labor, material. This is another key point. If you write a PO for PSA, you cannot charge it to a job. The only way you can charge material to a job. Following gap is receipt of material, packing slips. This is the key piece of it. So you can write all kind of purchase orders, but if you don't receive the material, you cannot take the cost and charge it to a job. On the subcontractor side, you need an invoice. So in general terms, and I don't want to keep spending more time on this than the takeaway, the only time where revenue and billing are the same is in service work. And why is this? Because when you send an invoice for a service or T&M work, you already earned revenue. The work is done. That's the big differentiation between revenue and billing. Okay, moving on. Very quick, and I know I need to wrap this up in 15 minutes to open it up for Q&A. This is a sample formula. Your project sell price is 100,000. Your cost is 50. Your cost is broken down between material and labor. During month 1, your job to date cost 10 and 15, which is 25. So the first reaction you look at this, say, wow, I spent 25K on the project. The project is 100,000, so I'm 25% done. That's not the right answer. So if you go down and look at the formula you have, what's job to date cost? 10,000 plus 15, 25, right? What's your overall estimated cost? It's 50. So this job is basically 50% done, right? And if you apply the last formula, which is job to date revenue equal percent completion times sell price, you earned $50,000 on a project. Now, this is, you remember later on we're going to talk about earned revenue. This is more, not actual, this is what you spend on, this is the effort you put in, right? What happened if your project went over? You did re-estimate, right? Your labor was 15K, then the percent completion, it will be different, and I will talk about it later. This is kind of the key takeaway from one of your questions is, what's the difference between earned and actual cost charged to the job? So this is something you have to keep in mind as well, especially on fixed price like this one you have. You cannot go back to a customer and say, well, I made a mistake, my technician are not well trained, we made a mistake in this, and I spent 55K and I need to get paid. Most likely they're going to tell you, sorry, that's your problem, unless you can come up with a change order, right? So this is a big concept. I can't dive into it more, but this is called retro revenue, and this is where the difference between earned revenue and actual effort you put in what you charged a job. Okay? Very quick, 2 terms. You hear a lot, this positive slip. It doesn't happen often, but some jobs you can go in and do value engineering, save money on material like this, negotiate, better subcontract after the fact you build a job. In this case, you have a positive slip. Why? What's a positive slip? Positive slip is you came in under your cost. In this case, by 3,316, right? Sorry. And the sale price does not change unless you get a change order approved by the customer. And look at your margin. Went from 30,000 to 33,316. This is really good news. This is where you really want to be. And you added 3,000 to your bottom line on top of what you already have in the job. Negative, this is most of your jobs, right? It goes the other way around. When you went over. And this is where the job get hit by 1,138. This is a blank sheet you use when you do WIP, which stands for work in progress. And simply put, and you guys, I'm sure most of you deal with this, this is where you sit down, on large projects and you do a work in progress. So what's a work in progress? I don't want to go through every line item. Simple. What you have on the project, what hit the job at cost, 55,559, and you as a PM, you sit down and you predict what's left on the job. In this case, you need another 2,200 worth of material to buy. You still have 24 hours of project management, right? 8 hours of engineering, installation, and you come up with a revised estimate. In this case, 74,403, right? Which really, from the original estimate of 70, you're over by, your margin dropped. And so this kind of the work in progress, you guys, I'm sure most of you deal with day in and day out, or every month or every week. You go and look at your jobs. What am I? What's left to be done? Most projects, you'll be doing wonderful. Everything is going fine till you hit this magic 75% completion. Then you go 75, 85, 80, you get stuck in this. This is always the challenge for most project managers. Okay. Do quick time check, so we're doing fine. So let me talk a little bit about earned value. I have some formulas, could be too complicated, but let me tell you the earned value method, what it means. For example, if you're doing 5 cameras, each camera takes 2 hours to install. So your project is 10 hours. If you spend 6 hours on the job, 6 out of 10, and you follow the percent completion. So you look at your, somebody in accounting, they look at the job and say, all right, you have, we have 10 hours budget for the job at $100 an hour. You guys spend 6, you're 60% complete, right? Straightforward. How about if you spent 6 hours and you installed only 4 cameras, right? So from a basic perspective, if you only look at the actual effort you put in, money spent on a job, you're going to go in, and if you work for Bill or for me as a manager, whatever, say, guys, we're 60% done on the job. Go and invoice it, bill it, we're 60% done. The customer, and you go, accounting will bill the customer for 60% of the job, right? That's what shows. 10 hours, we spend 6. The customer is going to say, well, hold on. How many cameras did you install? We only installed 4. So really, what you earned, what you did, you only done 40%, right? Not 60. And I see this happening a lot. Even at one point, one of our major customer, he was livid. We invoiced him 110% on the job because the job went over. And accounting, they have an Excel spreadsheet, they run the numbers, and they invoice them, which is amazing because we're behind. And you can imagine all kind of problems if you don't go back and do what? See what you really actually done on site, not how much effort you put in. This is a simplified way of looking at earned value. So you need to go do re-estimates. Well, it does matter. If you're spending more effort than what you put in, you have these 2 indexes, cost and schedule, and these are the formulas. You can Google this, but in a way, this is a way of looking at a performance index, CPI or SPI, and basically look at if I'm spending $1 on a project, am I getting my money's worth, right? So if everything on budget, everything is fine, you should run 1. This index should be 1. My experience, most of the time, you'll be lucky if you're doing it at 75. We have a lot of slippage for different reasons. Poor estimate, no engineering, I can go on and on. But this is really the big differentiator on earned value, right? Earned value concept. Okay. Usually I like to have Q&A, but I want to one more time, and we'll open it up in 10 minutes for Q&A. But so keep in mind, earned value really it's what you did in the field, what you accomplished in the field, not how much you spent. Now, we talked about cost re-estimate. If you said in my classes a lot, you need to do this quickly. If you find out a project early on, before even you get going, do a internal review of your cost, look at all what's missing, what's not, and go back to your managers. Don't wait till the job and till the end. As soon as you find out there's a hit, there's a slippage, your job is not going to meet budget, you need to tell them right away. So they can plan the financials, so they don't get hit on the P&L. Second, you as a PM, you're going to be on this project. And if you do this proper sales to operation turnover and do a proper estimate, you're going to have a cleaner job and you set the expectation. So this is a key element of go back and do re-estimate and know exactly where the job is going to land. Okay? Moving on, I'll try to wrap this up in a few minutes and go back to your questions. So billing, it's a separate track. It's not really, you can tell, billing hits your balance sheet, revenue, your income statement. So you need to really understand how you manage your project billing. First, simple, understand your approval process. Go back to your general conditions. If you're dealing with a large project, look at the terms. Most GCs, they tell you, you need to send me your progress billing by the 20th or 25th of the month because they have to take yours, roll it up, and send their invoice to the customer. What happens if you miss it? Beautiful. This is the free money you're giving away because you're going to miss a 30-day cycle. This is cash. You cannot bill for it. You miss it. So this is one. Second, you need, as a PM, to establish a trust between you and the company and the owner or the GC's project manager. And the best way to do this is first submit a schedule of value early on, set it up right, but then before you invoice them, call them up a day earlier. Say, Joe, Mike, I'm 25 or 30% done on this project. I want to invoice you tomorrow. Do you have any questions? Try to get buy-in from them, right? And most of the time, if you give them a heads up a day earlier, they might come back, push you back, and I got this pushed so many times. They say, you're not 70%, you are 65. Quick, change it. You rather don't fight it much. Try to get paid for 65 or get it in, then wait and lose all of it if you want to wait for the next billing cycle. Make sure you use the proper format, send it to the right address. So all of this part of your role as a PM, and I don't want to bring up the DSO and all this different issue, but this is a huge challenge I see most companies on cash flow. Customers are in the driving seat. They want, some of them, they try to find a reason not to pay you. So don't make it easier on them. Do all the stuff you need to do as a project manager to make sure your billing is accepted, move forward. I have to bring this up on large project. It's called schedule of value. You can Google this on AIA site, but this is more of where you set up the stage for a large, big, ongoing project for a few months. If you don't do the proper schedule of value early on, and I want to bring this up, usually I don't, but you can do some front loading or move some items a little bit. But the key is try to match as much as you can between your schedule of value and what you do on site. Because cash flow is going to be a key driver for you and your company. And you as a PM, you have big influence on the cash flow position and your days of sales outstanding and making sure that you have enough cash to pay your bills. Okay? I still have one metric presentation I want to give you quick, share with you, and then if you guys are okay, I want to go through the Q&A submitted and open it up for any additional questions you might have. Metrics. So what are the metrics? You have all kind of metrics. Financial metrics, investment. The one really ties into you as a PM are called performance metrics. And honestly, I used to have these for 10, 15 years, and things change, and I will tell you what. So don't take this like you need to go back and revisit, but especially on the material costs, I'll talk about in a second. These are the key ones you need to look at when you, one of your questions is what kind of metrics you should look at when you're determining the project, how it's doing. Well, first of all, let's talk about installers and service techs. Misconception, a lot, service techs should generate more revenue than installers because the service piece have higher margin, right? But the reality is, if you're not getting from your installers between 35 to 40,000 a month, you're not making money. And if you can get 15,000 or 180 per year from your service tech, you're doing very well. So one question is obvious, why the difference? The big difference is when you do installation work, your contribution margin on these jobs include material, including your parts. So if you send a tech to do a camera installation for 2 hours, they're going to bring you 2 hours times $100 an hour, 200, plus the camera's sell price, right? So you see the difference. That's why it's as high as 450,000. PM engineering, this is a big deal for me, but a lot of companies don't really capture this or pay attention to it. Between PM and engineering on a project, it consists between 10 to 12, even 15% of your project cost. If you're in the alarm business, a smaller project, the engineering cost does not come to play. They call it a box of rocks, right? You go in, you give it to your technician, couple of motion detectors, camera, done. Even this job, they need to be pre-engineered. I feel this is a huge problem we have everywhere I looked at. In our business, we don't spend enough time to lay out jobs before we go on site. We don't have time. We send technicians, they figure it out, yep, we'll make it happen, and we have all kinds of problems. Project management is getting traction more and more. People start looking at this as a core competency. You need to go in and make sure that you properly manage a job. A PM by itself, if I want to take a snap separated from engineering, you're talking about 5 to 7% of any project you have. You need to set aside some project management hours to manage it. These hours are not installation, they're not startup, only to do what a project manager should do. Paperwork, documentation, communication, all the stuff under the PM, not installation. Material cost, for a long time I tracked this. It was between 38 to 40% of every project. What happened lately, and somebody corrected one of my students when I was doing this CSPM training or any other PM training, it went down. Material it's around 35%. What does it tell you? Material is getting less expensive, which is good news for your customer, but not really good news for you, because now a camera which cost $1,000 10 years ago, it costs $200 now. Does have a lot of pressure on your P&L, so your efficiency has to compensate for this. The last one I have, and then I go to Q&A, is day sales outstanding. This is a formula you can use, AR, you can Google this, but you need to really keep it under 60. And if you can get it down to 45, or you do pre-billing before, but this the last one is for cash flow management and billing. And you have a driver force behind this. Okay, I know it's quick, I covered a lot, but the takeaway for now before we go to Q&A is keep in mind revenue, it's a P&L, profit on a job. Billing is cash flow, balance sheet, billing, and these two, they're tied in somehow, but they're not identical. Some companies have different rules, which I don't want to go into this, but what you have to keep in mind, you know, you need to keep watching the cash flow. This is really key element, and I don't see too many companies do a good job in this. Somehow they lock out the PM from the cycle, accounting will bid it, and then you end up with the earned revenue issue, which we talked about. So earned revenue, take away from it, it's not how much effort you put in, how much you spend on a project, it's how much you get accomplished on site. And that's the concept of earned revenue. Okay, let me see here. I'm almost, we're out 15 minutes. So if you're okay, guys, let me go back to your questions, and then if we have time, we can open it up for further questions. So let's start with the first one. Let me move it here. So let me quickly talk about retainage. What is retainage? Retainage is the holdback. On large projects, I know in Canada they call it holdback, we call it retainage. Customer keep 10% from every payment you send them in. So if you invoice them for 100K during a $1 million project, they keep 10%. Why do they want to keep it? They want to keep it for make sure you're done. The question is, how do you reflect retainage when forecasting revenue? Go back. Retainage is a billing function. Don't mix the two, right? So when you do forecasting revenue, retainage has no effect. It should not have any effect on your revenue forecasting. Okay? Should you show change order revenue forecasting during accounting periods believe, or should you reflect it in accounting periods be billed? One more time. The question is, first of all, change orders, time of the essence. So if you have a potential change order on a job, don't wait till the end of the project. Send it in. Get approved. Most companies or organization you work for, they have contingency money set aside for change orders. If you don't get to it early, you lose it. So as soon as you get the change order, including, but make sure first it's approved, because you cannot do revenue forecast on change orders unless it's approved. But do it right away. What's the difference between earned value and actual completion? I guess we spent a lot of time on this, and I'll leave 5 minutes for if somebody add in, but it's a big difference. That's why you need to keep, especially on large projects, you need to do what I call re-estimating. Revisit your costs. How are we doing on this? And any changes, or you feel there's some negative slip on your project, do not wait till the end of the project to let your managers know. As soon as you find out, let them be aware of it. You have a contingency plan you can build to address it, but also the financial side. They can absorb it better than waiting till the end and you get one hit. What other metrics can you look to determine how a project is doing? I cannot share this with you, so you need to look at the efficiency of your technicians. They have to be 85% charged to a job. Project manager 75. You look at scheduling, which was not part of the performance metric. You need to keep sure that you're on track, on schedule. These are the key element of your project. And managing subcontractors is a big piece of it. So, and I don't want to have time to talk about how to manage sub, but this is part of it as well. When losing a project, when a losing project is given to the PM, how do you control cost? Okay, so a losing project, I'm assuming it's went over budget. The best way to protect you as a PM, as a company, is do a costly estimate and go back to your boss and say, look, you know, I understand we sold the job at 100,000, my cost is 70, the job is going to take 78 or 80. Do this re-estimate as soon as you can. Okay? If you do it this way, then you're going to have you're going to be measured against your re-estimate. And I know the argument. If I have somebody in sales here, they're going to say, well, before we bid any job, our company, they do pre-bid review, right? You go back to the operations, you grab the operations manager or the PM, say, review this job for me and, you know, get your blessing. And once you get blessing, you're off the hook. reality is not like this, as you know. When you bid a job on the sales side, you're lucky if you close 3 out of 10, right? So don't expect on the operation side that sales are going to give you 100% laid out design system. This is not going to happen. Stop fighting it. If you're lucky, they'll get you within 5% of your cost. You have to go down and revisit and work with sales, minimize the risk, but you have to do re-estimate and manage it, right? So this is the key. So losing a price, when you're losing prices given to you, the question is more the quality. Quality is tough, so maybe I didn't answer it right. You cannot negotiate on quality for a simple reason. I don't want to go and tell you, you know what, this is customer satisfaction, all these big slogans. No. If you do a poor workmanship, what's going to happen? Customer is not going to like it. You might have to redo the work. You might go back, revisit it. So don't even go down this route of sacrificing quality. It does not make sense on the business side. Okay. Let me see what else I want to bring up. We're almost 8 minutes away from concluding this. This is kind of where I hope I didn't go too fast. I tried to cover the differentiation. So keep billing in mind. It's not the same like revenue. You're looking two different tracks, and your role as a PM as equally important in making sure that you're getting paid for the work done, and you don't go into this 120-day customer not paying. It has a big impact on your company's financials, because cash flow at the end really what matters. And one more final comment before I open it up for any questions. Right now, with material costs going down and down, competition, technology is getting easier. It's not the old days of you need 2 days to get your Hayes 1200 baud modem up and starting. It's plug and play, all of this. Attention is becoming more and more toward you guys on the project side. You need to be efficient. You need to manage the job, save every penny, and this is the basis of your company's success. All right. I'm kind of done with my presentation. So we have a few minutes left.
We did have one question come through for you.
Okay.
All right. It says, can you explain the difference in the WIP of costs in excess and billings and in excess, and what advantages of being overbilled or having more billings in excess does to the cash flow? And also, how does underbilling hurt cash flow? They say at their company they're trying to manage their overbilling to between 5 to 10%.
Okay, perfect question. So when you look at billing and cash flow, so let me go back. There's something called unbilled revenue or overbilling. Overbilling, how it works, simple, basic way. You look at your percent completion if you're following this, and you look at the price, you say I spent X effort on the job. If I go by the book, I should have 100,000 earned revenue, right? If you manage to work on your schedule of value or overbill it, this is excellent news. So let's say you've been in for 110, right? So it's really good, because overbilling, it's going to help your cash flow, no question about it. What's the downside? And I rather always try to little bit overbill by 5%. You cannot go over, because now the customers say, what are you doing? It does not make sense. So overbilling will help your cash flow 100%. The downside with overbilling, and I will bring up the issue of deposit. Let's say you do a project. In California, you can't do this, but let's say in Florida. You get 25% deposit on a project before you start the work, right? Sign in. A job for $10,000, I get $2,500. Check. They pay me. The problem with this, you cannot take the check to the bank and say, look, I'm 25% done on the job. Even I get the cash, right? Because you haven't really earned it. That's a good practice. As much as you can deposit, go for it, because it's going to help your cash. On the other side, it's a liability for you, because what happened if you went in and spent the money and then the job didn't go well? What are you going to do? You're going to go back and and go back, give it back. So be careful about overbilling. I feel overbilling is always helpful on the cash flow side, but on the revenue, you have to be careful and it will catch up with you. Now, one quick comment, and I have another question came up. See what happened, and I did large projects. If somebody knows me, I did $8 million job, $50 million job, and I always was good in front-loading the schedule of value. So I get paid early. I was catching up. So the company was happy because the cash flow was going well. But what happened at the end? Boom. I couldn't bill because now I have to catch up. So you have to be careful about this. But maybe it's a long answer to a short question. Overbilling help you on cash flow, but really doesn't have much to do with the revenue side. Okay. I got a question regarding the metrics we receive. Do they apply for large and small jobs alike? Very, very good question. The short answer is yes, except on the project management and engineering. My experience now, I work for a company right now. RMR is king, service is king, small jobs. This is really where the cash is, and the metrics don't apply because on smaller job, do you need really 10-15% for project management engineering? The question is no. So it does in some metrics. It makes a difference between a large and small jobs. In these small jobs, I call it alarm, not integrated, straightforward. Your lead technician could really, they don't need really detailed drawings like point-to-point and interconnection. They can go in with a layout drawing showing devices, done. So this is the big difference I see between small and large jobs. Okay? I hope I answered everybody. If I'm trying to see what's left here, but this is kind of, just one second, keep stressing this. I see a lot of project managers working for me right now or in the past. They don't look at the financials as, like part of their job. It's accounting. It is. You guys, you're driving not only the profit, but cash flow. Okay, Jamie, back to you.
All right. And I'm going to open up back up to Bill as well. Bill, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
Nadim, how often, if you're a project manager, how often do you think you should be reviewing the WIP reports? And then does it depend on how big the job is as well, on WIP report review?
Good question. Usually WIP reports on large jobs, we do, for my, once a month as a minimum on large jobs. Some companies, I don't want to tell you daily, but some companies look at that weekly. But as a minimum, Bill, I feel once a month you should look at where are you on the project. And definitely you don't want to do WIP on a $5,000 job because once you're in, you're done. So you have to look at job at completion. But any job over 90 days or 60 days, I feel weekly quick feel, we call it pulse. Maybe you just look at what's going on, but once a month, non-negotiable. You have to go and revisit every cost and do a reestimate.
And one more question, Nadim, because when we worked together a number of years ago, you always did a good job. We had some high-powered sales guys who were compensated, based on the profitability of the project. So,
right.
Naturally, they were always saying that, the operational and installation staff should have been better and faster. And I've seen you do it, but the guys on the phone haven't. How do you handle the irate, rain-making salesperson who feels that, the job should be more profitable and run better?
Give them a big hug and keep buying them lunch. No. But this is the issue. I don't sound. Yeah, we go back to the sales compensation, and you're right. I mean, if I'm paying somebody at completion, I have this guy as a co-project manager. They want to make sure that you put Joe on my job, not Nadim. They want to make sure they're protecting their commission. I feel the key is do a sales to operation turnover, set the expectation early on, and tell them, you guys, you know what, we can't go in and as a PM, you cannot at the end of the project go back and tell salesperson the job tanked. I feel the first phase of the project, which I call defining phase. Sit down with the salesperson, get buy-in, do a kickoff meeting with the customer, and set the expectation early on. Don't assume that this will go away. If you don't address it early on, you're going to have problems.
Okay.
But this is going back, Bill, to the sales compensation. I mean, when you and I worked on this, we had this buy-in period for 2 weeks. The PM will review the job and buy it, and we'll get the salespeople off the hook. Right now, 90% of the companies, they don't want to do this. They want to wait till the job is done, and this will create an issue between sales and operations.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it does look like that's all the questions we have for today. We would like to thank you all for joining us, and to register for additional PSA webinars, visit buypsa.com/about/events. A big thank you to Nadim and Bill as well.